Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. Tonight's executive producer for the Sleepless Nights podcast is Anita Rivnik. We're buckled up for safety, and all systems go.
Attention, Sleepless Nights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
It creeps, it crawls, it eats you alive.
It doesn't write back.
No, it never writes back. This is the second part of our Sleepless Nights Blobcast. Emphasis on the ob. I'm your host, Mr. Lobo, and this is my blobby co-host, Paul, the pantsless producer, Sanders. Boy, it is hot. I cannot stand this summer heat, Paul. How are you? Are you roasting? Is your blob juices roasting over there?
No, I'm good. I got some AC going on. Gal's got it all maintained up here. I mean,
I guess it's
either that or freeze my ass off.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's freezing cold in space. Well, unless we're, yeah. So All right, that's fine. Well, I'm glad that your air conditioning is working fine on your space pod.
Well maintained. It's like it's like Tahiti.
Right. It's like Tahiti. Set it and forget it. Is that like Tahiti?
I don't know.
That's like a Ron Popeil infomercial. We are talking, of course, about... Well, actually, we're not talking about anything yet. We're just blathering. The Blob.
Blatherskites.
Last week, we had exciting Blobcast Part 1. We talked to Dash Daring, intrepid Blobfest reporter and host of the 2020 Blobfest Home Edition. What a great time that was. That was a fun show. That was an amazing show. Hopefully all of you, watched it on Vimeo, had a great time, got to see Mr. Lobo's traveling spook show from the Colonial Theater, the home of the Blob. Blobfest is something that's really near and dear to my heart. We have a brand new Miss Blobfest. Last time we talked to Suzanne Ferner, who was Miss Blobfest 2019. And now we have a Miss Blobfest Universe, who was crowned during the virtual Blobfest proceedings, the home edition of the Blobfest. So we have a brand new Miss Blobfest, Melissa Tapley. Paul, do you know Melissa? Yeah. Do you know Melissa Tapley? Have you ever heard of her? Or?
I mean, if she's of the universe, I guess we should be visiting out here sooner than later, right?
Perhaps, yeah. Her and Gal could dish probably.
I guess.
But I think that. Do you watch the watch parties on Saturday nights? Are you ever in the watch party on Facebook for Mr. Lobo's Cinema Insomnia fans group?
No. When did you start this?
Well, ever since chronic diarrhea was hitting the earth really strongly, and just to sort of cheer people up with the whole apes and apes and kaiju and all of that stuff, I started rewrapping, not rewrapping the entire episodes, but basically doing a double feature every Saturday night with a couple of my old shows, and then I do 2 or 3 brand new cut-ins. With some anecdotes about making those shows. And sometimes we actually will play a podcast, one of the pODDcasts before the movies start. Sometimes we'll play some of our promos and things. And basically, Melissa Tapley is in the Saturday night program, these watch parties that we do, every single weekend. She's in there for like 6 hours for these ridiculous watch parties that we're doing. And on top of that, this is gonna blow you away, Paul. She bought my yellow rocking chair, the one from the zombie TV era of Cinema Insomnia. She bought one of my rocking chairs for $1,000 on a Patreon. She got it as a reward for the $1,000 tier on Patreon. So that's unbelievable. So this is a hardcore movie fan. I cannot think of anyone who's mentally ill enough to be Miss Blobfest, or more than that. That is someone who's tragically addicted to B movies. Someone should intervene right now.
Well, now post Blobfest, she can actually hang out in the chat room and sell autographs in the channel.
She could sell autographs. She's got my chair. I mean, she could just take over the whole cult movie world now.
She could just be Miss Lobo.
The real Miss Lobo and Miss Alyssa Tapley are going to have like a Star Trek battle to the death, probably at some point.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun, 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 dun. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, they've got those weird, like, I don't know. I used to imagine them fighting with like a broom and dustpan combo. That's what I imagine them fighting with. So Melissa Tapley's is the new Miss Blobfest, so that's exciting. That's new. And then of course we did the Spook Show. What you saw in the Spook Show will all be incorporated into a future Cinema Insomnia episode. So if you missed it in the for the Blobfest Home Edition, we're going to expand the Spook Show from Blobfest into an entirely new Blobfest Spook Show episode. So, and that will be exciting. And Melissa Tapley, our new Miss Blobfest, will be in that. And then if you look carefully, perhaps 2019 Miss Blobfest and 2018 Miss Blobfest might be hiding in there too. Very exciting. Like I said, Blobfest is always fun. You know, it will be more fun when we're all together for real, and in real space, not with our VR headsets at the virtual Colonial, but at the real Colonial Theater and in the real Phoenixville, for a really wonderful community event, and kind of a curbstone, is that the right thing? Cornerstone to a keystone to this whole really exciting kind of community. You know, there was a lot of like artists and filmmakers and film fans and event makers, and there's a really interesting little community, a scene of people that seem to all be connected to each other, and it seems like the Colonial Theater gang all sort of fits in all of that. And speaking of the Colonial Theater gang, we're talking to one of the founders here. We're diving deep and talking to one of my favorite people in the whole world, Dr. Frankenstone, who is one of the Blobfest elders, and we have interviewed him before. What was that, 2018, Paul?
Yes, because I believe he shared it with Wes, I believe.
Yeah, and then he showed us his Colonial Theater tattoo. That's as hardcore as you're going to get when you're going to put a movie theater tattoo on your arm. And an awesome thing to show off on an audio podcast. Because visuals help out really great on an audio. Well, you know, you take off your pants every week for the podcast. He can show us his bare arms. And with that being said, let's just take a short break and come back with one of the Blob Masters, Frankenstone.
TNT will return to them later tonight. The Answer gone, but here comes the Blob. Watch it on TNT's 100% Weird.
You're not dreaming. You're watching cinema, Insomnia. And today we're in the blobbiest place on earth, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, at the Colonial Theater. It was right here at this very spot where the Blob got loose in the theater and chased the patrons out into the street. We have a special celebration every year where we commemorate that day that the Blob got loose, and somehow the Blob gets loose again every year, and 300 people go running into the street. Hopefully this year they'll have a handle on that. Please come with Mr. Lobo inside, won't you? For this year's special, Blobfest special presentation special.
Boy, that was close. Make them listen to me. There is a monster. We saw it again in Dad's store. It looks bigger now. Beware of the blob, it creeps and leaps and flies across the floor, right through the door, and all around the wall.
The Blob, Saturday at 1 on Super 32.
You're not dreaming. This is Mr. Lobo. I've got my VR headset on, and I am virtually sitting in the beautiful, historic Colonial Theater, and I am talking to your friend and mine, the beautiful and historic Dr. Frankenstone, aka Shane Stone, from the mighty Blobfest. And this is welcome back to the Blobcast.
Thank you, Mr. Lobo. Thank you for having me back. I really enjoy this.
We had a nice talk the last time. We talked to Wes, too, that day, and it was really probably one of our best shows when we talked about Blobfest.
Yeah, Wes is awesome. I really miss that guy. He was around. We kind of took it for granted. We always thought Wes would always be here with his buddy the Blob, and I'm just glad I had so many opportunities to talk with him as well. I was so glad you got the chance to do the podcast and the interview with him. That was a big hit with a lot of folks.
Oh, I'm so glad, because it's really weird, because you do take people for granted, and it's just like, oh yeah, I see Wes all the time. I see him at Monster Bash. I see him at Blobfest. There'll be another chance. There'll be another opportunity, So I'm really glad that I took that extra time to talk with him, and it was so great to hear about his tales of being an annoying little kid who was obsessed with the Blob. I guess we all were that kid too.
Right, exactly.
Now, we talked a little bit about how you came into Blobfest last time, which I think you were having your first kid. Is that how that was what was happening? Or
yeah, my second kid was over being born at Phoenixville Hospital.
Oh, your second kid. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so there's a little carry-out store that's right across the street from the hospital, and I ran over there to get some provisions, because labor can be long and grueling for the men.
Yes, and sometimes the mothers too.
I've heard that, but I don't. But so I
think we did that joke the last time.
I know, exactly. It's like, man, I got to come up with a new line. But yeah, so I ran over there to get snacks and such, and I saw a poster for it, for Blobfest, and I had never heard of it. I grew up as a monster kid, loving all these old classics. Had no idea, what is this? And I was so excited to learn that, the Blob was filmed there in Phoenixville and in Downingtown. I never would have expected that. I always thought, of course, everything was made in Hollywood, of course. I never would have thought that in a million years.
I think the fact that if it were just made in Hollywood, I don't think there would be a Blobfest. I think that there is something magical about the whole community coming together to help make this film. I think that's part of the magic of Night of the Living Dead. I think that's part of the magic of Carnival of Souls. I think that you have a lot of people who are really driven to take part in something so big, in a small town.
Yeah, and it's, and you see it with, obviously the extras, everybody running, infamous running out of the theater scene. Everybody's having a blast. Like, they just want to be in on this thing. And I don't think anyone really maybe knew it was going to be as big as it, eventually became. The blob got bigger.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yuck.
The blob always gets bigger than you think it's going to get.
It never ceases to amaze me. But yeah, it's just, it was, hey, you guys let's make a sci-fi movie. And, it's, Shorty Yeaworth, a genius to make it all happen and to pull this thing together and, make this classic. It is the great, it's the hometown story transfers right onto the screen.
How would you explain the Dogwood Parade? It's something, what had happened, they do it once a year. It's just a bunch of floats. People wave at the community.
Right.
What does it for? How did the Dogwood Parade start? I just wanted a quick capsule before I say my anecdote, so people know what that is. Yeah,
the Dogwood. There's a park in Phoenixville that just has a ton of dogwood trees there, and so the Dogwood Parade, it started as a, of course, very small, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing. But it's traditionally around the time when the dogwoods blossom.
Okay.
So that
makes sense.
That's where the impetus was, and then it just grew into this thing that, like I say, it's floats, all kinds of different groups, marching bands and such.
So we were in the Dogwood Parade, and I was dressed up 50s, and we did one where I was Captain 74 too. But the one that I remember the most is both of those times were really great actually. But you're driving at about 5 miles an hour through the whole town.
Oh, right.
And people literally could just walk up to you and start talking to you.
Right. And do
in the middle of the street. And it would always be this thing about, my grandpa was in the movie, or my auntie was in the movie, or I was in the movie when I was a little kid, or someone stepped on my face when I fell out, or when I came out of the theater. My auntie was the girl who fell down in front of the theater. And it just or they talk about Steve McQueen, the day that Steve McQueen came. And I remember one guy was adamant that Steve McQueen never smoked. And I'm like, yeah, have you looked at his face? I mean, that guy is leathered from tobacco. I don't know why you would think that guy would never smoke a cigarette. But he had this impression of him being that wholesome teenager. And I was trying to tell him about the scene where you can see the cigarette smoke coming up from behind his back because he was smoking in between takes of the movie, and he would just put his hand behind his back without even putting out his cigarette. That's how nonchalant he was about making this movie as a 35-year-old teenager.
Oh, I thought he was 12, and that's where all the cigarette smoking weathered him so badly.
Oh,
12. That's the story.
He was a 12-year-old.
It looked like that. Yeah. Man, I'm glad you told me the real deal.
So you became involved with it fairly early, but who founded it? Who started it?
As far as I know, it just kind of started organically, because people would come by the theater. They've always been able to run movies, and so folks would come by and know what it, would recognize it, or they would be like the folks that we were looking for, sightseers looking for movie locations kind of stuff. And they would stop by and ask, hey, do you mind if we reenact the running out scene? Well, sure, why not? Why wouldn't we? So it just kept kind of growing from that. And eventually, you start to get X amount of people over a week. Then, well, why don't we make it a evening of watching the movie, and then you can run out of the theater. And we just gradually kept adding more and more and more to where it expanded till a full 3 days of 50s, 60s, Americana, classic monster movie stuff. But yeah, it just started as people kind of literally just walking up and saying, hey, do you mind if I run out?
It's incredible. Yeah, I think we said the last time also, I think I mentioned it's kind of like the steps in the movie Rocky or the Exorcist steps, or it was just
right.
Now it's where the Joker was filmed, where he's coming down the steps in the Joker. I'm sure they have jackasses dancing and jumping down those steps.
Right.
Where the movie Joker was filmed. it is interesting that there's a whole community of people who are obsessed with film locations. And in Phoenixville, there are several locations from the Blob that are still there that you can see, right?
Right. Yep. For me anyways, one of my favorite is the Doc's house. It's Doc Hallen's house, and it's just a super cool, old Victorian style house. And of course, it's right on the edge of the Dogwood Park, on the corner of it there. And the owners have kept it up fabulously. It's one of those things too, it kind of sticks out on that whole block. You see like, wow, I'd like to live there. That's
that's a beautiful house. And there's somewhat, if you're respectful and don't make a lot of noise, they're somewhat tolerant of people coming and taking pictures and stuff of the house, from what I understand. You just have to kind of not be a jerk about it.
Exactly. And there's one of the folks involved with the committee she has years and years ago, she developed this thing. It was like a walking tour of Phoenixville where you could go through, and it was almost like kind of a check-off game. It was like, oh, here's the Doc's house. I'll take that off. And, just various locations like that. There weren't a whole lot of them. Like the diner is actually not in Phoenixville. Even though you would.
It's about 20 minutes or so.
Right. 20-minute car drive.
20-minute car. Yeah. No, not a walking tour. 20-minute car ride. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, people always ask us, like, well, where's the diner? It looks like it's just right around the corner. No.
It's literally across the street from the movie theater.
Right. Exactly.
In the movie. The
How'd
magic
they
of the
do
movies.
That?
Now the high school's there from the movie.
Right. Yeah. And, here's a funny thing about Phoenixville is a lot bigger than, even I recognized or knew, because I was so, I honestly never left the side of town that the theater's on for so long. It's I'm there for, a lot of the time every year, but I, honestly never went to the other side of the burg. It is such a cool little town. There's lots of, it really is the hometown Americana feel.
It's amazing. I definitely got caught up in it. It was such a wonderful thing to be involved in putting those shows together. And just the guy coming out and, I'll never forget the cook coming out and wanting me to go in the kitchen with him and help him figure out what a blob pancake would be so he could put it on the menu, you know. And then seeing people advertising their blob burger or their blob haircuts or their, just everyone, all the window displays and, the fact that everyone gets involved, the street fair with the classic cars and, that's the part of it that's amazing, that it's so organic and that the public is allowed to participate. Because I think a lot of things are really closed off. A lot of events are very closed off to where, they want to be in control of every aspect of it. And I kind of feel like this event, at least historically, has always had this community involvement to where everyone gets to add a little spice to the stew. So
we want them to, that's what makes it special, I think. And, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's unique. In my mind, it makes for a much better time because everybody's in on the fun. They're in on the jokes. It just makes and everyone's respectful. Everyone is having a good time. I always say, we have a crowd of, 4-year-olds to 90-year-olds.
4-year-olds to 400-year-olds.
There you go. But yeah, it's, I would not put on an event that I wouldn't be able to take my little kids to. And that's what I think is very special about us is, I go to a bunch of monster and horror conventions, and there's a lot of really gory kind of stuff in a bunch of them.
Yeah, it's that heavy metal sex dungeon aesthetic that a lot of horror conventions have, that which can be cool if you're up for it, but if you're not in the mood for it or if you've got little kids with you, it can be a drag.
Yeah, and that's where it's heartening to me to see these generations, if you will. It's like, oh, my dad used to take me to Blobfest and it was such a great time. I'm gonna keep doing the same thing because one thing is I'll a whole. What I can see a level of success, or where one of my gauges is, I see these typically too cool for school teenagers having a blast. That's where I think like, aha, we're on to something, because these guys are typically so jaded by horror movies, jaded by life in general more than we ever were, and they're hooting and hollering. So I like that.
I think silliness is an important ingredient in Blobfest. I think that to let your guard down and not worry about your status or how cool you appear. And just let yourself have a little bit of goofy fun and get caught up in it. If you're open to that experience, there's nothing quite like that kind of fun. We'll be back with more of our interview with Dr. Frankenstone on our Sleepless Nights Blobcast.
Greetings, Insomniacs, who just caught Mr. Lobo contemplating where his life went wrong. This morning I came downstairs and I'm like, what's all this crap? And I realized all this crap is me. I mean, not the me, but a little me. An actual figure of Mr. Lobo. You have been asking for figures and bobbleheads for over 10 years. It's like, Mr. Lobo, I gotta have a doll. I gotta have a this. It's like, that's a hard game to play. And we wanted to do it right, We didn't want to sell you a bunch of junk. And if you want the Mr. Lobo, please, today, go to Mr. Lobo, actually go to OSI's Store Envy store. So the OSI Store Envy shop, pick up your Mr. Lobo. It says pre-order, but they're ready. They're ready to go. So get your Mr. Lobo Naughty Noggins today. And you think they should get him today? Yes, he does think you should get one today, so don't disappoint him. This is Mr. Lobo signing off.
Get your Mr. Lobo Naughty Noggins today at www.osi74.storenvy.com.
We're back with more of the Blob Master himself, Dr. Frankenstone, for our Sleepless Nights Blobcast. I love it. I get caught up in it. It definitely meshes with my sensibility a lot more than a lot of other horror events do, or horror movie connected events do.
Yeah.
Now on the Friday.
I was going to say, and how seriously can you really take yourself during a tinfoil hat contest?
Now, who started the tinfoil hat contest?
That was Andy Miskowicz. And she also started the walking tour, the Chekhov spot there.
Okay, and then they used to do because the tinfoil hats are always present at Blobfest, which I guess is the connection to the fact that the blob is from outer space.
Of course. Then you'd have to be, those kooks are, nobody believes in that nonsense.
And then, of course, you wrap your head in aluminum foil because everyone knows that aliens hate leftovers.
Boom, boom.
Yeah.
I have to, just one of my all-time favorite tinfoil hat entries was a woman who had a Jiffy Pop and it actually worked. So it was like it grew as she was, on the stage. Like, that has got to be the coolest thing I've seen this week for a while.
Wow. So Friday is usually the run out where everybody runs out, and I'm trying to figure out a way to describe this to people who don't understand. But anyhow, we usually what we would do typically on a typical year of Blobfest is that we would have a stage show, and to keep it interesting, it wasn't always the blob attacking. but it's usually the Blob is involved somehow.
Right.
And then there's a storyline on stage with the various characters, and then we do, there's a dance number that usually happens. There's shorty awards that are given out, and the shorties are basically the short film awards. Everyone makes a 3-minute sci-fi movie or trailer, and then the best ones we give awards to. Shorty named after the director, and Shorty Ayworth. And then they're basically at the critical time during the stage show, something happens, usually bad, where you're going to get hit by a meteor or the Blob is loose in the theater again. And everyone runs out the front door in mock terror, right? And somehow no one's died or got trampled, right? How is it that this hasn't resulted in 1 million lawsuits?
Oh, thanks, Mr. Lobo. Way to jinx us. Jeez. Good grief.
But the fire department blocks the street off, right?
Right. And it's very, it's kind of funny when you see it happen. It's this, it's kind of anticlimactic at first because you can really only fit so many people out the front door, and everyone is so respectful. They're not pushing and shoving or whatnot. But then they get to that, and you really do have to shoo them, like come on, let's go, you guys, But they are like nobody's bum rushing at anyone or knocking each other down, and but it is hilarious to see from both sides, as you're walking up and out, how slow it is, and then you hit those doors, and it's
And then at a certain point, the doors are closed, and then the firemen come in and blast the Blob with CO2, right? Right. And then the whole lobby fills with CO2. Now, whose idea was that, and when did the CO2 come into it?
Well, I want to say that was probably Andy Miscavige again, because there's that, like you said, there's that it's kind of like a, lack of a better word, like a air chamber between the main doors to get in, and then
it's almost an airlock between the main doors and the lobby. Yeah,
exactly. But so
breezeway.
And Andy came up with a lot of really cool ideas like that. Like she would always do like some kind of like a dressing for the elevator. Things
I loved it. They would have the Muzak version of the Blob theme playing in the elevator, and there'd be a bunch of like weird things. There'd be the Blob oozing down on you from the skylight in the elevator or whatever. Yeah, it was great.
We had Rico Browning, the gentleman who played the creature from the Black Lagoon, as a special guest. So she made these decals that were portals where it kind of looked like you were undersea, or
yes, you were getting in a submarine or something. Yeah.
Right. But so also I must regarding the running out, it has become so popular. Initially it was just, hey, come on in, let's have fun. And then it kept growing and growing to the point where we have had to start selling tickets to it, just to kind of control crowd, because it was just getting bigger and bigger. And now it's at the point where I think it's selling out in like 5 minutes.
If that. I feel like it sells out almost instantly. Now this year,
no, I was just going to say, in another reflection of the popularity of that is that the township has started setting up bleachers across the street from the theater. Because so many people just want to watch everybody run out. So, that's enough. It's like, wow, this has become quite a spectator sport.
Yeah, that's the other side of it too, because if you can't get in to run out, you can still stand out there and watch people run out, which is fun too. So this year, of course, we have, and by the way, the pandemic on the podcast is just referred to as chronic diarrhea.
Okay.
Yeah, but we've got a lot of lore happening in the podcast, a lot of canon here. We had the apes take over.
Oh my God!
Yeah. I know. We had a whole Planet of the Apes situation, and then because legally we had to change it 25%, it became Planet of the Abes. So then we had Abe Lincoln's versus apes, and then they started like a whole technological future, nightmare future, and then the chronic diarrhea virus was created, and so this is the world on the podcast that we're living in now.
See what happens when you give 100 monkeys 100 typewriters? They come out sooner or later.
They write a terrible podcast is what happens. Because of all this, because of all of the things happening in the world, we are not running out of the Colonial Theater this year, right?
Correct.
Frankenstone.
Correct.
Not literally running out. I think we're all spiritually running out of the Colonial Theater this year.
Right, and we did, we did something because we felt we just have to put something out there. It would just be wrong to not have some kind of run out. Should I tell you about this, or have you?
Yes. Oh yeah. No, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. So what we did in the spirit of how can we still have that audience participation factor and still, honor the tradition of the run out. So we put a call out on Facebook to have people record a, quick 3-5 second video of themselves. Make a tape, recording of yourself running out your front door or, down the street, something, anything like
fantastic.
that. And then we have Bob Trate, he's a great guy on our committee as well now. He edited them all together, so it just looks like a continuous loop of people running out the door down the street.
That's fantastic. And how can people watch this?
That's the part where Chuck can tell you.
Okay.
Because it's some kind of pay-per-view, I want to say, and it's on Vimeo. But again, I could be 100% wrong.
So the home edition of Blobfest is basically some kind of, obviously this is to support the theater all year round. The Blobfest normally is a huge fundraiser for the Colonial Theater, which is a beautiful, amazing, historically important picture palace. And I would say kind of a linchpin to that whole community.
It really is.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate to, I've been involved with Blobfest for 17 years, and I can assure you, Phoenixville is a much, much different town than it was 17 years ago. And so is the Colonial. Just, it really is a place that your ticket money, everything goes into that theater. Repairs, any updates, no one's getting rich there at all. So it's I feel good giving my money to those guys because I know where it's going. And,
yes.
I know they need my money far more than Regal.
I hear alarms going off where you are. Is the blob getting loose? Is that what's happening?
God, if only that were it. No, we're having quite the weather now here.
Gosh, Dr. Frankenstone, I feel like we could talk for 5 hours about monsters. In fact, I feel like maybe we could try and do this again and just talk about monster movies.
That would be cool. Yeah, like I said, I really miss seeing you this year. I'm glad everybody's, safe and sound, staying home and doing the right thing and just taking care of themselves. And Blobfest will be back. I have no doubt there.
Oh, you can't stop the blob.
Never.
Ever. Yeah, absolutely. Frankenstone, you're one of my dearest friends. You're an awesome guy. Thank you so much for bringing me into the world of Blobfest. And we had a lot of great adventures, didn't we?
Oh, absolutely. And here's to many more. I love you, man.
Many. Love you too. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Tonight, the Blob invaded Phoenixville.
Don't worry, though, even though it did send many running into the streets, screaming at the top of their lungs. That was the scene at the Run Out at the Colonial Theater, all part of a weekend full of events called Blobfest. They pay homage to the 1958 film classic The Blob, a big weekend for sci-fi, horror, and B-movie fans. Chopper 3 was over the scene for a bird's eye view of the Run Out.
This makes absolutely no sense. Dash has gone through some sort of interdimensional portal and finds himself here, in town, on Bridge Street, in front of the Colonial Theater.
Dash, what do you see?
Sweet Steve McQueen, it's the Blob up on top of the building. You need to get out of here. I need to get out of here.
You hear that, everyone? The Blob, ladies and gentlemen. Run for your lives. Run slowly and carefully for your lives. Women and children first. It creeps. It crawls. It is too alive. It's coming. It's coming for us all. Run out. Run out as if your lives depended on it.
First, there's Steve McQueen. Then there's this purple goo, a bunch of ignorant locals, and a killer theme song. Don't miss The Blob next on 100% Weird. And later tonight, this sci-fi film was originally shot in 3D. Watch God tonight at 4:45 on 100% Weird.
What a wonderful guy. Dr. Frankenstone, Warm and Fuzzies. I love that guy. That is like part of my cult film family. And it was great to talk with him. It was great last week to talk to Dash Daring and Suzanne Ferner. I mean, all of these people. We've had so many adventures together, and hopefully many, many more adventures to come. And maybe not just in Phoenixville and not just at the Colonial Theater. I mean, maybe. I feel like that there are other movies, right? I mean, in Pittsburgh. The Night of the Living Dead was shot in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Carnival of Souls, I think, was is it Utah or something like that? I feel like maybe we could just travel and find all the weird locations for all the, maybe like where the Earth versus the Flying Saucers, we could do a show in D.C. where the saucers crashed into the Washington Monument. Maybe we could do a show in Pahrump where Mars Attacks happened.
Go to area, 52 point whatever it was?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Where the Abe Lincoln heads were.
Area 52.5 a.m. or whatever. Yeah, where the Abe Lincoln heads are. Yeah.
Let's go to these nice scenic places and then do an audio podcast.
Well, I'm not just talking about the podcast. I'm just talking about when you're not just floating in space and I'm just not here in a bunker or a space station or various secure undisclosed locations where we record these podcasts. I'm just talking about when we can all be somewhere, and there's so many great theaters too. Like I feel like that there's the Roxy Theater, there's the Emmaus Theater, there's the Mahoning Drive-In. Maybe we should just try like an outreach where we're just try and bring these goofy movies to as many goofy people that are left on this godforsaken world overrun by diarrhea and apes and abes and kaiju and science run amok. That's how I feel about it.
I mean, I'm just hung up on one thing, though.
What's that?
Back in segment 1, you said that Frankenstone has bare arms. Where does he keep them? And is there like a bear walking around with no arms? I mean, how does that work out? Are they fake?
It's the genetic engineering aspect of everything, right? If Miss Mittens can be a gorilla, then Dr. Frankenstone can have bare arms, I suppose.
Now, does he have his original arms, or does he have forearms?
Are we talking about his forearms, or are we talking about his whole arm?
Well, I'm talking about, does he have his original arms, and then he has the bare arms underneath, so he has four arms?
Does he have four arms like the original Grimace has four arms?
Yeah. I mean, I know I can't drink shakes around him, so that's about par for course.
But does it bring the boys to the yard? That's the real question. My forearms bring the boys to the yard. This has gotten so stupid. Does anyone even remember Grimace? Do we even have anyone old enough listening to our podcast who remembers the Grimace with 4 arms versus 2?
Even better, do we have any artists in the group that can get us some art of Frankenstone with 4 arms, 2 arms being gorilla? Because him drinking a milkshake.
Gorilla or bear? No,
Sorry.
grizzly bear.
Grizzly bear.
Gorilla.
My bad. Yes, bear arms.
Where was the movie Grizzly filmed? Because maybe Frankenstone can show up there and show his arms off.
There you go.
Maybe. I don't know. It could be a whole different thing. Grizzly Fest. There's not enough love for that movie. Have you ever seen that movie, Grizzly, Paul?
Isn't that about the extra leavings on the plate after you're done with like a steak?
That was movie? At Sizzler. That's at Sizzler. That's just Gristle.
That's Grizzle. Oh, Grizzle. Yeah. I seen the wrong movie then. I seen something else.
That wasn't even a movie. That was just the other night at Sizzler.
that was the other night, like yesterday. So, go on.
Anyway, I guess you haven't been having very many steaks up there, which is too bad.
A lot of corn chips, though.
A lot of corn chips. Yep.
Banana Giorgio Romano. Corn chips.
Grandpa Nana's going to be this is why we can't keep a sponsor. You can never get the names.
You know what? If I walk the treads off of my shoes, I could put chips on the bottom and it works out just fine. I can only imagine what it's doing to my innards.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's just flaying your innards. Anyhow, Grizzly Paul was a movie that came out, I think it was 77 or 78. And it was basically Jaws, like almost beat for beat Jaws. Like everything that happens in Jaws happens in Grizzly, except it being a beach, it's a national park. Instead of a shark, it's a grizzly bear. But it's pretty hilarious to watch and to have Jaws on your mind when you're watching it. But I don't know if Gal has that in your film library, but that might be something fun for everybody to watch and compare notes in the future.
If it was Hitchhiker's Guardian of the Galaxy or Groundhog Day, then no, it's not in the library. I can tell you that right now.
So it's just Hitchhiker's Guardians to the Galaxy and Groundhog Day? Those are the only 2 movies you can watch?
Yes. Everything else has like an age check on it, and I can't get the password to get into it. And I can't. It's, yeah.
Did you just, I don't even think it's a password. You just have to count the number of teddy bears or something, right? It's something really simple. You put the colored blocks in the right order.
Gal, I want to watch this shark movie this movie that's a knockoff of a shark movie that was put out back when I was 3. Make that happen.
You don't have to do that.
I want the memories.
We're fully capable of jumping the shark.
Or jumping the bear.
Yeah, we're jumping the bear.
Jumping the grizzly.
I didn't know it was that kind of show. All right. Well, I guess we could. We'll just talk about jumping bears another time. So
I think that movie might be available up here. I don't.
What, jumping bears?
I think it's triple X, but
yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, that you have to have a different check on that one. That's a totally different check.
Maybe we could do a not a jumping bears episode.
Oh boy,
we can not talk about it. How about we just make that? We make that a rule. We just don't talk about it from here on out.
That should be every episode is not jumping bears episode. So Paul, do you feel like there's? I mean, I guess there's a lot of other people we could talk to concerning the Blob. I guess we could talk to, we could talk to the Swami Rivera from the Spook Show.
Okay.
We could talk to, I'm trying to think we could talk to some of the survivors. Like every time I would do a show there, I always run into people who are like, oh yeah, my aunt was in that movie, or oh yeah, my someone's face got stepped on in this movie, and my Nana got her face stepped on in front of the Colonial Theater. So maybe we could try to find some of those people. Maybe we could talk to Steve McQueen's widow. I don't know. I feel like maybe if we're going to do a whole month of Blobcast, we got to figure out of some more people we can talk to.
If you're talking to the Swami, can't you just talk to Steve McQueen?
Oh, that's a great idea. He could get the Swami to raise Steve McQueen. Wow, I can smell the Marlboros already from the ghost of Steve McQueen. Yeah, I just feel like, yep, it's going to be like Old Spice, and it's going to smell like Old Spice and cigarettes. That's what I'm imagining. That's what I imagine Steve McQueen smells like.
Old Spice, cigarettes, and motorcycle oil.
Oh, yeah, right. That makes sense. A little bit of motor oil in there.
Yeah, no, motorcycle oil. Even though there's no difference.
Yeah. Yeah, even though there's no difference. He knows the difference because he's a man. He's a man's man.
Is that WD-40?
Yeah.
That's not even motor oil.
No, not at all. Formula 44D.
44 double D.
Oh, wow. Now that's another adult lock that we can't get past. So, wow, I don't know. I was just going to segue from Formula from 44D to the Blob, but I just couldn't get there.
How do you get there?
Never mind. But anyhow, thank you so much for enjoying us on our Blobcast. We hope that you love the Blob as much as we do. We hope that you enjoyed these 2 episodes that we did on the Blob. We didn't really talk a whole lot about the Blob, the movie itself, but there is a lot to talk about. It's a very cool movie, and there are other locations too. We could maybe even do a whole show from the diner, where the Blob, the diner that the Blob ate. The Blob ate. The Blob The Blob had eaten. I don't know how to say that properly.
So if you're eating at the diner and the Blob eats the diner, then the Blob ate you at the diner.
Yeah, in Mother Russia, the diner eat you. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to. It's the joke there. Yeah. But anyhow, if you want us to do more of next year, if you want this to be an annual tradition, tell us.
Yeah.
And because I think there's a lot more to say about the Blob and a lot more fun to be had.
Yeah, so if we have enough foresight, we could probably, we can just do a Blob month.
Yeah, that would be fun, especially if we actually prepared? Like we didn't do this time.
Hey, Paul, I need you to do raps, and here's the audio 5 seconds before you have to do the raps. Oh, sorry, spoilers.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's all part of the Blobfest magic. Just pulling it out of your ass and hoping for the best. And on that note,
in Phoenixville, the Blob don't pull the Blob out of your ass. The ass pulls the Blob out of you. Wait, the Blob pulls you out of its ass. I said it back.
Good night.
You have been listening to the Sleepless Knights podcast, or should we say, pODDcast.
pODDcast.
Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Deadhouse Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as Bestow TV, at bestow.tv, on YouTube /Bestow TV, on Twitter at BestowProd, P-R-O-D, and on Facebook, Bestow TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
That's
patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Nights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
Podcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.